Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandom at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.
The old adage is that two's company and three's a crowd. But when you're talking about football jersey numbers for the NFL, 3 is crowded with football legends. Oz Davis and I had a great discussion back in February 2021 to talk about these greatest players in our Best of the Pigskin Dispatches jersey number series.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Like we promised earlier, we are going to go into our series on the football by numbers and jersey number 3. So let's kick that over to that special guest right now, Oz Davis and football by numbers. Tonight's episode, we are going to talk in our journey going through all the jersey numbers of football, 0 through 99. We are on the jersey number 3 tonight, and we have kind of a historic moment here on the podcast. Our first returning guest, Oz Davis, is going to be helping in the discussion tonight for jersey number 3. We had such a great time last night in the number 2s. If you haven't caught that episode, please make sure you go back and check it out after you're done listening to this one, because we had a good time. It's just like we're going to have tonight. So we want to talk about the significant players in pro football history. And Oz Davis, as just to remind you, he is on the Sports History Network's Truly the GOATs podcast. He also does the SHN Showcase podcast. Mr. Oz Davis, welcome to the Pigpen.
All right, great to be back.
Okay, well, now tonight we have a night I know you've been waiting for, because when I said I was going to do a series on jersey numbers, I had, one guy with his hand up saying, "Ooh, pick me for number 3, pick me for number 3." And so I think there might be some favorite players or a favorite player that you want to talk about tonight.
But I also want number 80 too, by the way, so keep me in mind
80.
for that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep me in mind for that. Okay. In any case, well, yeah, there's a couple of big number 3s. It's also interesting to note that I've got a good trivia question for you too. The number 3 is really crucial in at least a couple of other sports if you're talking great uniform numbers. Of course, in baseball, that's Babe Ruth.
Oh, yeah.
And in NASCAR, that was Dale Earnhardt.
Right.
Most people still consider the GOAT NASCAR driver. But do you know why Babe Ruth wore number 3?
No, I don't.
It's actually a real simple answer. He batted third. The Yankees, of course, are famous for Lou Gehrig wore number 4. The Yankees, of course, are famous for being the only team in Major League Baseball that doesn't have the names on the back of the jersey. However, they were the first team to put the numbers on the jerseys in baseball because they wanted everybody to know who their stars were.
So interesting. So Ruth didn't bat cleanup. Gehrig got batted cleanup, huh?
Oh no, famously not. Yeah,
okay.
It was always Ruth Gehrig.
I'm a football historian, not a baseball historian. Yeah. It just seems odd to me, though.
Always okay. And it's funny too. Because if you play the 27 Yankees in Sim or something, and you let the computer set the lineup, invariably they'll put Gehrig third and Ruth fourth. It was much more logical, but Ruth had the ego. So in any case, number 3, it actually turns out to be a really important number in NFL football history too. We talked last episode. I won't reveal any names or anything, but we talked last episode about how these low numbers, when you talk about greats to wear them, it's really important, or you really get a nice look at the early days of football, because back in those days, the low numbers were taken by the important guys, just like the Yankees in the 20s in baseball. And so, your number ones, your number twos, your threes were the key players on that team. There wasn't much of a, there wasn't like we have nowadays, which is actually quite a logical system where, your linemen were in the 60s and your backs are 20s and 30s and quarterbacks are teens and whatnot. So, but they didn't have that back in those days.
You know why they changed that? I believe it was in the 50s they changed that, the numbering system.
Just for ease of refereeing, I would guess.
Right. As being a former football official, you know that 50 through 79 are not eligible unless they had an eligible position. Now in the NFL, they got to report. They got it easy. Right. High school, they didn't have to report if they were, well, they weren't eligible in high school, no matter what. You could run the ball, but you weren't eligible to catch a forward pass. So a little bit easier.
How should we do this one then? Should we?
Well, I show 4 Hall of Famers in the Pro Football Hall of Fame that wore the number 3 there's some Hall of Famers wore the number 3, but people that wore the number 3 in a substantial number of seasons, let's say. Mm-hmm. And there's 4 of them. A couple of them are really big names. Let's reverse it a little bit tonight. Let's save those gentlemen for the end, and let's talk about the sort of the guys on the periphery that wore the number 3.
Okay.
All right.
Well, you got one that's a prospective Hall of Famer, right? Russell Wilson.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
The amazing thing about Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll, and the Seahawks that he plays on are just, the way that they are in contention every season after season, but B, the way nobody notices. The Seahawks are almost the parallel to the Patriots since Carroll took them over. Always a threat to be in the Super Bowl. Often thought to be, at one point in the season, the favorite in the NFC to win the championship. So, and he had some great teams too. So.
Yeah, and did it most of the time without a significant offensive line. Poor guys like this past year, he's running for his life and still had it was up for at some one point for being the NFL MVP for a while there. He was in a talk, so.
Yeah. So Russell, definitely a prospective Hall of Famer from this list. Now, you got another. Is Daryl LaMonica really not the Hall of Fame?
No, I don't. Not show Daryl LaMonica being in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Wow, crazy! Because he was one of the guys that was the big name in the AFL when that rogue league first started for the Raiders. And I'm surprised.
Well, before the Raiders, he had his first 4 years with the Buffalo Bills.
Right, the Bills,
two AFL championships, I believe, where he was the starting quarterback of them, and then went to the Raiders. And I didn't realize he was with the Raiders as long as he was. He was with the Raiders from 67 through 74, so he overlapped Kenny Stabler quite a bit.
Right.
I knew the 1 year they did, but I didn't realize he was still hanging around in there. But,
he was there for a while. That's how I remember him from when I was a kid. On the football cards. So, I'm surprised because he was like you just said. He was a big name in the NFL.
Well, one stat I love to look at with quarterbacks that have played a substantial amount of time is I like to look at their touchdown to interception ratio.
Of course.
And LaMonica had 100, this counts as AFL days with Buffalo and Oakland, 164 touchdowns, 138 interceptions. So he might not have been the best caretaker of the ball at some games. So
the AFL was a much more free-flowing, much more risk-taking league anyways, right?
Right, so that might be one of the reasons why he's not in the Hall of Fame. Definitely had the longevity, 12 years altogether.
Well, Jesus, Joe Namath is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You know, that's always the argument, right? I mean, it's like Namath and LeMonica are very comparable, with the exception of the one big win. You know, which is not to sneeze at that, because I mean, basically that one win put the AFL on the map.
When you have a game called the Super Bowl versus an AFL championship,
right.
That makes a big difference. I think it's got the name Super right in it, you know?
It's a dead giveaway. So there are your perspective. Those are the two guys on this list that I would consider like real bubble Hall of Famers.
Well, what do you think about a guy named Carson Palmer? He wore number 3 for...
Well, yeah, I was there was another guy. I talked last time about how I defended Matt Ryan. Carson Palmer was another guy I defended for a long time. History will not be nice to Carson Palmer. But those of us who saw him know that he was great. He was great. He just played on some really... I don't know. You're a generous guy, so let's say subpar teams, Cincinnati and Arizona.
The good teams that he played for were probably the Cincinnati teams, and he actually wore number 9 with Cincinnati.
Right.
It's when he went to Oakland and Arizona later in his career he put the 3 on. But I thought he was outstanding he was a USC Trojan.
Yeah.
Came out, I remember this being a Steelers fan. He was a teammate of Troy Polamalu, and I think he came in the NFL a year before Polamalu did. So Polamalu's rookie year, I think it was Polamalu's first game coming in, they were playing the Bengals. Carson Palmer at quarterback, and I forget who, the Brokaw or somebody was doing the game, and they were like going, here Troy Polamalu and Carson Palmer were teammates, and now they're opposing each other. And boy, that really came to had a lot of history to it, because it was like 6-7 seasons that they opposed each other, at least twice a year, and there's a couple playoff games in there that they played. And
that also might have been living in Southern California, I can tell you that might have also been the last time USC was any good. It was when they were on that team.
There might be some people that disagree with you, like Russell Wilson's coach that you just talked about. He might disagree with you a little bit.
I'm joking, but it feels like that these days. Have you seen the state of California college football? My God, it feels like that. But yeah, those are some great USC teams. Oh my God.
But I think Palmer, it just seemed like everything was going so well for him, and then that playoff game against the Steelers, Kimo von Hoffen hit him, and I don't think it was a cheap shot. I think he got blocked, hit him down at the knee. It was a bad thing, and the Bengals were up in that playoff game, and they were looking pretty good, and it seemed to just deflate the whole balloon for the Bengals, and Carson Palmer's career seemed like right in that game. At least that's my perspective. And
the wheels literally came off.
Yeah, he just never was the same. And I think his knee was better, but he just wasn't the same. It was like there's an uneasiness about him, He's a little skittish, Threw a lot more interceptions.
I'll tell you what, when you get to number 9, he's got to be in contention there, because that's a pretty obscure number.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is.
Even for the old days. So.
But even, he threw a lot of interceptions after that. He had a couple seasons, I guess 3 or 4 in the 20s. But his ratio, 294 touchdowns to 187 interceptions. So 100 more touchdowns or so, more than 100, more than interceptions. And he had some bad years of throwing interceptions. His last few at the Bengals, they were pretty dismal. Okay. We got a bunch of other quarterbacks in there. What do you think about Jeff George? Jeff George were number 3.
Well, I don't know. Right after him, you've got Derek Anderson and Bobby Hebert. I might go with one of those two over George. Isn't George like the stereotype backup?
Man, there is a guy that had all the skill sets. I mean, all the talent in the world coming out. And I mean, even with let's set this straight. With his first 4 years, he played for Indianapolis, wore number 11. Then played 3 years with Atlanta, wore number 1. Then he switched over to 3 with Oakland, Minnesota, Washington. So the latter part of his career, the backup role, he was a 3. But you got to talk about the man's entirety. Now, his touchdown, he had 154 touchdowns in his career, 113 interceptions. So a little bit more like on the LaMonica.
3-2.
Yeah.
3-2, basically.
But pretty close to what LaMonica was. But a lot of teams he played for, 5 different teams. But I never thought he was. Yeah.
All odd numbers. I guess. I mean, there's something to be said for longevity here. I mean, he did start in how many? 124 games plus playoffs. So there's something to be said for longevity there. But, jeez. If you can't put him in the same conversation as a Russell Wilson or even a LaMonica.
No, I think these gentlemen we're talking about right in here, they're probably...
This is the third tier.
Yeah, they're... I'm not even sure if they're going to make it on the Hall of the Very Good, PFRA. I'm not so sure. Maybe Carson Palmer, but I don't know sure. But...
I kind of like the idea of a Pro Football Hall of Very Goodness.
Oh, you never heard of that with the PFRA? Member of the PFRA.
Great.
We have the Hall of the Very Good. Every year we vote, and actually, it's unbelievable how many times a member of the Hall of the Very Good within a couple years goes into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So
do you have to take him out of the Very Good?
I'm not quite sure. I think they get to stay there. They get that honor. I might be mistaken. I'll probably have Mr. Crippen or somebody calling me after this. I should know that better. But
my boy Doug Flutie had better be at least in the Very Good Hall of Fame.
I don't have that list. I pray I'd get that on there. but okay, let's talk about some other guys sort of on that periphery. Derek Anderson. There's your perennial backup.
Yeah.
Had a real good year with the Browns. I'm not sure why they let him go because I thought he played outstanding. Even in the playoff game that they were way ahead of the Steelers. Steelers came back, beat him, but he had a great game. I don't know why it wasn't his fault that they fell apart. Bobby A. Bear, there was a guy I always liked. Bobby A. Bear. He sort of had some moxie to him, Most of his career was with the Saints and played 4 years with the Falcons. 135 touchdowns, 124 interceptions. Ooh, that's a little bit more interceptions than I thought he had. Oh, I guess I only remember the good things about Bobby A. Bear. I always liked him.
Oh yeah, well he became it kind of shows the low expectations Saints fans have had since being formed in '72, but he became a almost legendary figure there for going 20-8 in his first 2 seasons as a starter, as his first 2, let's say, full seasons as a starter. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's in the late '80s, and I mean, that might have been in '88. I want to say
'87 he was 10-2 as a starter.
Yeah,
'88 he was 10-6.
I want to say one of those years was the first time they ever made the playoffs.
It could be.
I don't know.
They had that great defense.
Yeah. They just, and A. Bear was, as I remember, he was constantly manufacturing plays because, again, victim of an average or below average offensive line. It seems to me that he ran quite a bit because he averaged, I think 1 year he averaged something like 5 yards a carry. So he was definitely one of these scrambling quarterbacks of the new sort. But and then I don't know what happens. He just kind of drops off the map when they lose him to Atlanta.
Well, he had after that 10-6 season of '88, '89 he was 6-7 as a starter. 1990 he missed the entire season in a contract dispute. That sort of hurts your career.
That's weird.
Came back, had 2 more years with the Saints. 8-1 as a starter, 12-4 as a starter, and then Atlanta got their hands on him, and it sort of fell up. The wheels sort of fell off the truck there for him.
Turns 33 and he drops off.
His last year he was 3-10 as a starter and 25 interceptions. It was not a good year for Mr. Hebert in 1996.
I'm trying to think of who they replaced him with. Let's see. I'm going to try and get this up here real quick. Who took over for him? Wade Wilson? Can that be?
Well, I think Aaron Brooks was coming in. We talked about him last night.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So Aaron Brooks, I think, sort of bumped him off there.
You're right.
Okay, a couple other interesting ones. A gentleman still playing, Jameis Winston. What do you think of him as a number 3?
I think Jameis Winston is a lot of fun. I was surprised that he got so little play this year. He finally did come in for Tampa Bay. No. Who's he with now? Green Bay?
No, he's with the Saints now.
The Saints, that's right. Actually, that's right. I remember.
He wore number 3 with Tampa Bay, and now he wears number 2 with the Saints. So we're talking mainly as Tampa Bay, because that's really where he played. He only he had no starts this year. I think Tyson Hill got all the starts when Breeze was out. But he did. He had 11 passing attempts, 7 completions.
Yeah.
So he did get in a little bit.
I think I'm surprised that nobody wants to take a chance on this guy. Yeah, he takes a lot of chances. He makes bad decisions and stuff.
But does he really? Because his touchdown to interception ratio is not horrible. 121 touchdowns, 88 interceptions. That's not horrible.
But that's trending down, isn't it? I mean, last year was 30 and 30.
Well, he had 30 interceptions in 2019. That was his worst year.
Okay.
Before that, his highest season was 2016. He threw 18 picks. So something happened 2019. It was probably Bruce Arians' offense for throwing the long ball. It's not his forte. That's and
Arians is not exactly the most conservative coach in the world either. So
I think he was a little bit more dink and dunk and he thrived under that. Those first 4 years in the league.
Yeah. I like Jamias, but again, you've got him in here with Wilson and even Hebert. You've also got John Kitna here. Again, here's a guy I covered, and Joey Harrington as well. These are guys I covered. I mentioned last time that I covered the Raiders, but sorry.
I was going to say, don't speak bad about Joey Harrington, because a guy named with last name Chapman, I think that might be his boy. So don't.
So I was covering the Lions at about the same time as covering the Raiders. I got a lot of good beats in those days, and Kitna's a tough guy and all that stuff, and he really talks the talk, and he puts his body out there, and he's a great teammate and all that stuff, but. At the end of the day, he's 2020 Phillip Rivers, limited in skills.
When he was with the Bengals as a Steelers fan, I feared when Kitna came into the game. I'd rather have those starters because Kitna he was just the poison for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
For some reason, when he was at Cincinnati, he owned you guys.
Yeah.
But, again, mostly I know him from Detroit, where, a lot of those guys were tough. Really, but great team guys, but just not the skills just aren't there. So.
All right, well, I have 3 more on here, but we don't need to spend a lot of time with them because we need to get those Hall of Famers. But Brandon Whedon, Mark Sanchez, Rick Meyer. Sort of all in the same boat. I mean, Sanchez had some success, got the 2 AFC Championship games with the Jets, but ever since the butt fumble, I think his career sort of fell off a cliff,
that's the thing. When you're remembered for something like that, it's amazing because for a lot of my teenhood, Harold Baines was known as the dude who got thrown out by Bo Jackson. from the wall, from third base. Okay, he was known as this guy, but he made the Hall of Fame. In the end.
Yeah.
So it's just like, but the butt fumble is a bit more egregious than that. I mean, he wasn't playing Bo Jackson. So
That's right. That's for sure. All right. Well, let's get into our Hall of Famers, because this is the meat and the potatoes of the number 3 jersey.
There's some good ones here.
Okay, we'll save the 2 big ones for last. How do you say that?
Okay, let's see who you think the 2 big ones are.
All right. Well, maybe we disagree, but okay. Well, out of the Hall of Famers, I'm going to talk about the kicker first, because I think not that kickers are unimportant, but this guy's definitely good. Jan Stenerood in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, he's really one of the all-time great place kickers, though.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I mean, you can't besmirch this guy. Of course, he's most famous for kicking. Let's see, I guess it would have had to have been about 6 points in Super Bowl IV. The Chiefs win against a bunch of extra points and a field goal against the Vikings. Stenerood played forever, as I recall, and mostly for Kansas City. And
19 seasons.
Yeah, for a while he was number 2, I believe, all-time point scorer behind Blanda. I believe for a while, because he racked up a lot of points. He was around forever. And I mean, this was a guy, he was basically the equivalent of Vinatieri in the day. I mean, he was the Adam Vinatieri of his day. And I think everybody agrees that Vinatieri is a Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah.
So Stenerood was that. I mean, you talk about generational players. Okay, Stenerood was the generational player. He just was.
He had 13 seasons with Kansas City. Started in 1967, played through the 79 season. So think about those late 60s, early 70s Kansas City Chiefs teams. They're pretty good, 4 years, and he wore number 3 with Kansas City. Had 4 years with Green Bay from 80 through 83, wore number 10. And then his last 2 years, 84 and 85 with Minnesota, put the number 3 shirt on again. He was a great kicker. Definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, I would say, in there. But compared to our other 3 Hall of Famers, probably, he's in a big class with the jersey number 3. Now, the next one I'd like to talk about is Tony Canadeo.
Yeah.
Tony was born in May 5th, 1919, Chicago, Illinois. And he is another one that had a great nickname. They called him the Gray Ghost of Gonzaga. Those are some...
You stole my thunder, man. You stole my thunder. I was going to say he deserves mention for just the nickname here. But, the key thing about Canadeo is, I mean, look, he was the halfback, for Curly Lambeau's Packers in the 40s and 50s, I mean, and he was also a two-way player. He played pretty fair defensive back, and he did some punting, and he played special teams. So basically, he's like all 3 teams, and it's not just a one-off. He was regular defensive back and special teams returner. So. You gotta love the all-timer. He's in the Hall of Fame because these Green Bay Packers have dozens of guys probably in the Hall of Fame. And again, they say about Lambeau's teams, about Lombardi's teams, that some of the important things is that they advance the game itself. They change the way people play it, and so you have to give props to Canadeo as a godfather of modern halfback play.
Oh yeah, I think it was 12 seasons he played, 4.4 average per play, 31 touchdowns, first team All-Pro 1943, went into Pro Football Hall of Fame 1974. I mean, great career. Especially two-way player. I mean, you got to be tired out there. You're playing offense, and you go and then you got to hit guys and tackle them and take on blocks.
And that 4.4 yards per carry doesn't sound stunning, but you got to remember that before 1980, it seemed to me like off tackle run. was the main play by the halfback.
Oh, right.
That was the main call, right? And, it's a 2-yard play. So,
a lot of A-gap, B-gap play, here.
Right, exactly. You didn't get too many reverses in those days. And so, anybody that whose lifetime over 4 out of this era is noteworthy, basically. So.
All right. Well, now we come down to I'd consider the big 2.
Yeah.
And I'll let you pick who we want to talk about next. 'Cause they're both infamous names.
Okay. Well, all right. Let's talk Bronco Nagurski first.
Okay.
You can talk about Nagurski's accomplishments, and actually, since he's a back, we actually have some statistics on him. But for me, the real key to Nagurski is he's really pro football's first household name, right? His reputation earned in college at Notre Dame. Of course, he brings that to the NFL, and it really is that first step into giving the NFL the prestige that it has today.
Well, he wasn't Notre Dame. He was University of Minnesota.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
he was a Golden Gopher.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, bad slip. Sorry, fighting Irish. Sorry, guys.
As an Irish fan, I'd love to have him on the Irish.
How about it? He had that reputation from college. He brings it to the pros, and he really, puts it, because back in the day, college football was way more prestigious, was well more beloved than the NFL, than pro leagues, which were fledgling. He was the guy who I really think had the American sports fan talking about pro football, on this national level. He really garnered all the interest in the game. And plus he was a pro wrestler. So I gotta love that. I gotta love the two sports stuff.
Well, it's interesting being a two-way player. 1929, his senior season in Minnesota, he was voted as a first-team All-American at 2 different positions. Yes. Defensive tackle and a fullback. I don't know of anybody. I look at these every single day. I don't know if I've ever seen somebody in the same year make it a first-team All-American at 2 different positions. That's
especially those 2. That's a weird. How do you have that size and that speed?
I don't know, but but just the name. There's another one of those names that's just like, I'm playing Bronco Nagurski today. That just sounds like a football name, That's
of course,
name.
It's one of the great names. It's a Babe Ruth name, It's like, that's a football name, Bronco Nagurski.
That just sounds angry,
Yeah, it sounds big and tough. It's tough not to have Nagurski here at this number 3. He definitely makes the team. He's a legend. He's a legend in the true sense of the word.
He's an NFL champion 1932 and 1933 with the Bears. He was part of that infamous play of that first championship game, I believe, where it was under dispute, where Red Grange, the rules back in the NFL back then, you had to be at least 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage to throw a forward pass. And I guess the Bears ran a play that was sort of right on the line, and Red Grange, and I forget who they were playing. I think they might have been playing the Portsmouth Spartans, and they ended up playing that championship game because Portsmouth had the better record, but Hallis, he just couldn't have it. He challenged them to, hey, we got to play this game because we were right behind you. And Portsmouth, the players needed money back then, so this is a great way to make some extra money. The coaches wanted some extra money. The fans loved it. So Portsmouth said, okay, we'll play you for the championship, even though we had the better record. They get down the end of this game. Red Grange throws a pass. Apparently, he must have been close to the line of scrimmage, and passes it to Nagurski. Nagurski scores a touchdown. Bears win the game. Protest all over the place, about, hey, Grange was within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. It's an illegal play.
Why didn't the coach just throw the challenge flag?
Because it's in black and white. They didn't recognize the red flag.
That's right. That's when the whole world was in black and white.
That's right.
And everybody moved around really fast, and everything was quiet.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Can we go on to my favorite?
Okay, you've been waiting for this for a long time. So yes,
this is the reason why I'm here. Okay, so I got an axe to grind. I'm still grinding this axe. That back in early 2020, the NFL did their special. They did a series which was really awesome. A bunch of experts, including Bill Belichick, were on the show, talking about the 100 greatest players of all time, of the first 100 years of the NFL. Right, so a lot of people complain that Terrell Owens got stiffed, because he did get stiffed. But for me, by far the biggest omission, and really not even close, is Jim Thorpe. Now, granted, Thorpe was well more known for his college years, playing for the Carlisle Indians team that famously beat Harvard, that basically beat everybody. I mean, they were the best team for the teens, pretty much, under the guidance of Pop Warner, who... And I heard this, somebody said this one time, but you know you're important to the history of the sport when there's a level of the game named after you, such as Babe Ruth baseball. Yes, well, Pop Warner football sort of indicates how important Thorpe's coach was in college. Regardless, he was brought into the NFL because of his worldwide status as, basically the greatest athlete of his day, having, done so much damage at the 1912 Olympics, in which he won the pentathlon, and the decathlon. And of course, this was an inspiration for the Truly the Goats podcast. He's episode number 1, in my opinion, the greatest athlete of the 20th century. But the NFL, when they were forming in 1920, brought him aboard for his reputation and also for his team, the Canton Bulldogs, who had been wreaking havoc all over Iowa, India, Pennsylvania, wherever they went, as one of the best semi-pro teams in the country. And they made him president. And so Jim Thorpe may be the only guy in any sport to be a halfback commissioner.
Right.
That's quite a two-position player right there. Now, in the NFL, he ended up only playing 52 pro games. But, he, again, not many statistics. One
statistic, though, just to be fair to him.
Right.
1920, when the roots of the NFL started, they considered that the NFL starting, Thorpe was 33 years old. So, I mean, but look at in today's world of football, 33-year-olds are probably retiring, or retired already. So Thorpe came in at 33. His last game that he played, he was 41 years old, as a tailback, halfback, whatever back he was for that particular year.
Yep. He's already. This sports is really, really different 100 years ago in America. America never really, for one reason or another, took on the sports club model that they had in Europe, and that they still have in Europe. In Europe, you don't have minor leagues. Right? You have subdivisions of your team and stuff, but those are youth teams. What you do is literally when you're 10, you decide that your parents decide that they want you to get some exercise. And so you go to the local sports club. And if you're good enough, they'll put you on a team. And, for example, when I was living in Budapest, our local team was Újpest. And let me tell you, their sports club had gymnastics, soccer, hockey, basketball, any sport you can think of, figure skating, any sport you can think of.
Wow.
And that's the way they do it there, right? That they don't have minor leagues and stuff. It's all community-based rather than, guess what, business-based like it is here. Okay, so in the U.S. at the time, it was highly, highly ragtag, right? I mean, Jim Thorpe came out of the 1912 Olympics, obviously couldn't go back to college, right?
Right.
You know, and so he said, what am I going to do? Well, so what he started doing was he said, I'm going to go play professional baseball. You know, and then in the off season, he went and he played semi-pro football, right? Because of his Carlisle days. So when you say he debuted at 33 in the NFL, it's kind of like saying that Arvydas Sabonis, debuted in the NBA at age 32. He actually had this whole other sports career.
Well, let me
before that.
Let me rephrase what I was saying. Let's say that Thorpe was same athlete he was, but born 10 years later in life, so that in 1920 he was 23 coming in the NFL, which, I mean, besides the Olympics, he was definitely a better football player than he was baseball career-wise.
That was his best sport. His best sport.
And so a 23-year-old Thorpe coming into the NFL and playing for, 52 games, you have a much different athlete and probably cracks your NFL 100 with no problem.
Oh, easy. Well, I mean, my theory is that the reason why he doesn't crack the top 100 along with Nagurski didn't either, is simply because they don't have video. That's it. Now, that's kind of a cop-out.
Well, did Red Grange make it?
That's a good question. I don't think so, though. I think
That's
the earliest, even though they called it 100 for 100, I think that the farthest back they went was Sammy Baugh. I think he was the oldest, and he was in like the late 30s, early 40s. So I think he was really as far back as they went. And they showed a bunch of still pictures, basically. They did the Ken Burns thing. Where they show pictures and just kind of slowly focus in on it, and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, Thorpe kind of doesn't get the recognition he deserves, but when I did the Truly the Goats episode, I spoke to the guy who's the curator at the Jim Thorpe Museum and Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame, and in his opinion, and there's something to be said for this, in his opinion, and he has a point there. Also, if you're a Republican, you can thank Jim Thorpe for making Eisenhower president. Because if Eisenhower and his buddy on the Army team hadn't decided to go after Jim Thorpe and both get knocked out of the game, Eisenhower with a broken leg, he might never have chosen the career path that he did, and might have been a football player. So thank Thorpe for beating the hell out of Eisenhower in the Army Carlisle game. That also gets him on the number 3 team, if you ask me. Yeah, exactly. Well, for one day in 1919,
okay, we gotta say it. You gotta put that "I like Ike" in there. You gotta get Well, there's not, like you say, there's not a lot of stats on Thorpe's NFL career, but I do see he kicked field goals. And there's not many of them, but there's not every year is recorded. And when I'm going to look at the Pro Football Reference website on Thorpe, and but still to be an all-star tailback, to have the career that he did, to win the pentathlon, win the decathlon in the Olympics,
for me,
be a Major League Baseball player,
you talk about the
kick field goals.
That's
just an all-around athlete.
Or a lot of these sports. I often have to consider the guys with the shorter careers, right? Just because of the effect. I mean, the truth is that one of the greatest guys ever to play NFL football is Bo Jackson. No one will ever talk me out of that. I don't care if he only played 4 years or whatever. It doesn't matter. If you saw him, you knew. If you saw him in college, you know. He was an all-time great. For basketball, I always talk about Sabonis. Another one is Drazen Petrovic. You may remember this guy. He played back, and he came up in the league right about the same time as Michael Jordan. He had already been winning championships in the Yugoslavia before then, and this guy was primed to be, the second or third best player in the NBA. Unfortunately, in one of the off seasons, he has a car crash. Dies before he can even hit his prime. Okay, for me, Petrovic is still one of the top 10 European players of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Easy. And so for me, Thorpe, well, he was born out of time, but that doesn't take away his greatness at all. Well, thank God.
Yeah. But people are still talking about him to this day. I mean, how many players other than Thorpe, Red Grange, Nagurski? I mean, how many people from 100 years ago are still being talked about as much as in football? Of course, you have Babe Ruth and Gehrig and
right, and absolutely, and again, this goes back to truly the GOATs, man. When people talk about
one of the biggest names, all right, to this day.
Let's think about this again. We did the last episode and we hit on Matt Ryan for probably longer than you wanted to, but in 30-40 years, who's going to think Ryan when they think of the top 10 quarterbacks of the 2010s? Who's going to? Not too many people. A lot of people in Atlanta, but I mean, so again, like Thorpe is kind of the opposite,
right?
And thank God people are still talking about this guy, because what he did in so many ways was so important, and for the history of the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's change tunes here a little bit. I mean, I think we've covered all the significant players that were number 3. And you have, last night we talked about your Truly the GOATs podcast, but you have sort of a new endeavor you've been doing on the Sports History Network.
Sure. Well, the Showcase is a great way to
can you tell our listeners a little bit about the showcases and what they can expect if they go to listen to that?
I tend to think that the Sports History Network has a niche. There's a certain subsection of sports fans that's really into the history. And I don't just mean, memorizing the Super Bowl winners or something. I mean, like, interested in the development of the game, the rules, the technology even of the game. And so for me, what I'm hoping to do with the Sports History Network is sort of introduce those geeks, and I mean that in the best possible way, to more geeks. Let's all come together, because again, there's a certain type of person that geeks out on hearing a podcast about Super Bowl 7. As is the case with Lombardi Memories. There's some kind of person, hopefully, that enjoys. Actually, I had one person tell me it was their favorite Truly the GOATs, that geeks out on hearing about a sumo wrestler 300 years ago. And so with the showcase, I'm hoping to turn people on to the really good work that's done with these Sports History Network podcasts, but just doesn't get that much exposure because I'm afraid that not so many sports fans really care about history. But I know who you are, and I want to appeal to you. That's right.
You know what? I mean, I've listened to your episodes. I was on one of your episodes of the showcase, and it's for the listeners. I think what it really does is you listen to Arnie Chapman. You hear him as a football history dude. You've heard 100 and umpteen, editions of his podcast, but you never really get to know who Arnie Chapman is. You hear who Arnie Chapman's interviewing. You get to learn a lot about his guests, but you never really get to learn about Arnie. And I think you've done that so well with all your guests you've had on so far on the showcase, of introducing the other side to them, to the viewership and the listenership, to get to know that person a little bit. And I think that just really opens up another channel into that personality of that host that people can enjoy. And I know I've enjoyed it, and it's really a fun podcast. Now,
and I think it would be kind of funny. I always thought what would be a funny idea for a podcast is this, okay? Because I do a lot of work in gambling. So I do a lot of writing for sports betting. And I was thinking what would be a funny idea for a podcast is to debate the NFL lines for the week, but it would be me debating myself. Right, so that way I could give the case for Saints -3, but also Falcons +3, right? Right. One of my guys is always going to win, right? So,
and you're never wrong. You always have a right answer. You could be one of those guys say, hey, stick with me. I'll give you the pick of the week. I'm always right. I was 100% last week, but I was also 100% wrong. Well, as we only have a couple minutes left here, anything else you're working on coming up in the future? You talked a little bit about some future episodes of Truly the Goats and maybe some SHN showcases. What do you have coming up that we can listen to and look forward to?
Oh, wow. Well, Truly the Goats has been a little bit difficult to plan ever since COVID set in. So basically for the past year, it's weird the way people's schedules got messed up and how contacting people got more difficult. Let's see. But earmarked, I'm trying to I would like to do something on the greats of the Negro Leagues because many exciting things have been happening with Negro League history recently. Especially with the Hall of Fame in Kansas City, a lot of interesting things are happening. So I'd like to do that. I would like to talk Irish sports. So I actually do have somebody lined up for that. I found some superstars in both hurling and Gaelic football. And let me tell you, for football fans, Gaelic football is a trip. I mean, you should check it out. It's kind of like a combination of football and rugby. It's really dope. It's a very interesting game. Very interesting. Oh, it's a very interesting game. Really neat to watch. If you like passing and stuff, it's a great game because it looks a lot like human table tennis. Okay, and then let's see what else. Oh, well, I'd really love to do a story on Ora Mae Washington, who is probably the greatest NBA Hall of Famer that nobody's ever heard of. So I'm working on that. And then I would really like to do a piece on Secretariat. There is I would like to ask the question, is an animal an athlete? Can we consider them an athlete? Well, you watched that record-setting Secretariat race, and that's one of my all-time favorite clips on YouTube. Is Secretariat winning by like 30 lengths or whatever at Preakness or Belmont. Just incredible. So in any case, that's kind of what I got planned for Truly the Goats. Of course, for Sports History Network showcase, it's Arnie, keep getting new people in the rotation so I can have more subjects to talk about.
Well, that's a great conversation we had with Os Davis, and we appreciate him coming on, and thank all of our guests who have been coming on. And most of all, we appreciate you, our listeners, for joining us on the SportsHistoryNetwork.com and Pigskin Dispatch podcast, because we just love to have you here, and we would be nothing without your listenership and your input. If you wanted to tell us something maybe we missed in our conversations today, you can email me at pigskindispatch@gmail.com. Just let us know who you think number 3 that you would like to have heard about, and we'll take a look at that, do some research on it, and put it on a later podcast. And anything else you want to talk about, again, pigskindispatch@gmail.com. You can catch us every day by hitting that subscribe button. You'll know as soon as it releases. Our friends out there in the internet world will give you that notification to know it's released. And you can also find us at the sportshistorynetwork.com, as well as other great podcasts on sports history with some great hosts and some great guests. You'll really enjoy that place. And our flagship website, pigskindispatch.com/podcast. You can catch all of the podcasts of the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch and do some binge listening, or go back and find some of the episodes you really liked and you want to hear again, and some of our guests that we have on, and we'll really enjoy having you here. So until tomorrow, everybody, have a great Gridiron Day. Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings your sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique items with the retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row One catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row One Pictorium Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.